Hello dear audio wizards and fellow music makers. Today I'm doing a video a bit different than usual. I want to talk about my approach to mastering and doing a little studio tour to explain my choices. So without any further ado, let's enter the studio. As you may start to hear, there is quite some proper isolation from the studio with building a box into the box. So the question is, why do you need proper isolation and building a box into a box? Well, first, to not bother the neighbors, but most of everything, to ensure a very low noise floor. Here inside the studio, I'm at around 30 decibels of noise floor, which means that I don't need to play sounds very loud to hear many details. I can play very low level. I can be working for hours without being disturbed by any other thing. It's built, as I said, a box in a box, which means that we have actually what we see here. The inside is actually in a wall. If I open this one up, you see we have actually one wall, and this is the external wall. This is allowing to have a very good isolation. And inside the studio, all the walls have been treated with different kind of treatments. I'm going to cover this in a second. So this is the view from my perspective. So the front wall is made with a window, while actually the back wall is totally covered with treatment. It looks like there's nothing on the wall because actually this is fabric, and behind the fabric, it's soft, you see it moves. Behind the fabric there are different kind of treatments. So why did I choose this kind of design? Well, first of all, I did choose this kind of design because after spending years in studios where I had no daylight, I felt sick of not having a view, not having daylight. This happened especially during COVID, where I was actually locked in the studio and didn't do anything else except being in the studio. So I wanted the studio with proper daylight and with some view. Hence the choice while actually building this studio to keep the front wall with a window to have an extension to the outer world. The other thing related to that is because of the design, the concept of this studio. It's not something I invented. It has been used in several rooms that we call non-environment type of acoustics, and it's used a lot by a very renowned acoustician who is Thomas Jean from Northward Acoustics. I called him because we have some common friends, and the only problem I had here in this space is that I had the proper width and the proper depth, but not the proper height for him to be working his design. He wanted at least 3.5 meters, and I had like 2.9. And the digging wasn't an option for a question of cost. So I reached out to the guys from Ideal Acoustics, who are designing a lot of studios, and I had very nice recommendations from friends of mine on their work. And I talked to them and I said, like, okay, I want a new studio for my mastering activities, and I want this front wall being with a window with no treatment at all on the front wall. And so you might think, well, that's a problem for the reflections, but in fact it's a good thing somehow. Why? Because this is the whole concept about the non-environment room, is that actually everything coming from the speakers comes to you, and your ears hear only the sound coming from the speakers, no reflections to the walls. But actually, instead of feeling kind of anechoic if the front wall was also treated, when you are speaking, when you are making sound, your body sounds are reflecting to the front wall and coming back to you, so you don't feel being like in a claustrophobic space, in something that is too dampened. This being said, the overall reverb time in this room, what we call the RT60, is 0.2 from 100 Hz upwards, and it goes a bit higher, 0.2 seconds, so this is very short, and it goes up to 0.25 at 34 Hz. This is where I have a little bump. We're going to talk about this in a second. So the idea is front wall reflective, but the speakers don't see it. They are projecting the sound to my back. This is also why I chose the Kii Three speakers with BXT, because not only are they exceptional in terms of frequency response, but they have also a cardioid pattern for the low end. So they are projecting the low end more up front than to the back, while usual speakers have a spherical diffusion pattern. So the back wall, for that reason, my back wall is made exclusively out of tuned traps, because while measuring the room, it was exactly like the projection were made. This is geometric projections. I had a mode at 34 Hertz, which is actually keeping the sound bouncing back and forth, and so it's creating bumps and troughs, peaks and troughs in the spectrum when you move around in the space. And so to avoid that, you could use usual rock wool, but then you would need a wall that is like 2 or 3 meters thick in order to really properly damp that frequency. Because this was not an option for space, I decided to actually build the whole back wall only with tuned traps that are tuned at this frequency. This is what allows me to put down this mode very, very low and to have a proper representation of the low end everywhere in the studio. Of course, this is covered with some fabric, so this is also taking care of a bit of the high end, so I don't have that much of reflection either in the high end. And the back door, you see there the back door is covered with diffuser. So back wall only the tuned traps at 34 Hertz. The front wall behind the speakers are also with tuned traps, but on another frequency around 100 Hertz. This is another mode that I had. The whole ceiling is dampened with some broadband absorption at some distance from the ceiling. I had some panels with holes in order to reflect a bit the sound and to just tackle some frequencies. Same goes on the sides, on the back. And the room has also a shape, and the shape is meant so that actually, even if there were some reflections coming through from the speakers, they wouldn't bounce back to my ear. So even without treatment, I don't have this early reflection, this first reflection problem, because from the speaker standpoint, you have the speaker, you have the wall, and the sound bounces to the wall and then to the back. It's never coming directly to my ears, which means that before the sound is hitting back to the ear, it has already bumped across several walls, and so it had to go several layers of broadband absorption, meaning that actually at the listening position, I have only the direct sound, which gives an excellent stereo image and a proper representation of what the sound is. Another thing in that regard, I'm going to flip the screen. At the speakers, you see them here. As I said, you see the angles from the walls. So every wall is angled to avoid reflections between the walls. And also, I have no desk, or at least a very, very tiny desk, to avoid also reflections from the speakers to a desk to the ears. And when I'm doing even mastering for even better stereo image, the desk is on wheels, so I can even push it to the screen, and I'm just sitting in the middle with my keyboard on my lap, and I have only direct sound. Another reason why I don't have outboard, because outboard is taking up space, outboard is getting in the way, and outboard can create reflections. So not only is there a question of recallability, is there a question of sonic transparency of the ADDA converters. Of course, there is analog gear that is sounding amazing. I'm not against analog gear, but in my case, for proper recall, for purity in the signal pass, and for purity in the acoustic pass, I choose to go 100% in the box. Another thing that you can see, well, I'm also a DJ, so I have my DJ booth with my speakers, but everything is on wheels. Even the speaker stands, the DJ desk, and my modular rig. Everything is on wheels for that single reason, is that actually when I'm doing some sound design, I just take my desk and I roll it, and I can be sitting in the middle of the room in a second. So every time I'm working, I can always be working in my sweet spot, no matter if I'm doing sound design or if I'm doing mastering or even if I'm recording a DJ set. Lastly, and this was an additional improvement I brought to the studio, these two little black cylinders you see here in the back, and these are actually active bass traps from PSI that are called the AVAA C214. To summarize, they are like noise cancelling headphones, but for a room. So because even with my fully treated back wall, I didn't reach to the point I was totally happy and I felt the low end was totally in control in the room. And so these ones are actually working in addition to my tuned traps. They are measuring the sound that is coming to them and they are producing the same sound out of phase. So they are canceling the little reflections that the walls might still be producing, and they are taming. Without them, I had 0.4 seconds of low end decay at 34 Hz, and with them I could bring them the low end down to 0.25. And so now, more or less, wherever I sit in the studio, I have the same low end result. There are little differences. I mean, like 4 or 5 decibels of differences, but this is very, very, very gentle. And at the sweet spot inside my room where I'm sitting, so exactly at the end here of the rug, there I have a perfect frequency response and a very, very, very tight low end. So I know that when I hear something in the studio, I'm hearing what is coming out of the speakers and I'm not hearing my room. So either the room form, that is avoiding parallel walls to avoid standing waves, that are angled things to avoid early reflections, and all the acoustic treatment plus the choice of the speakers for this room and the addition of the active bass traps are ensuring that I have a perfection doesn't exist, but I have a very, very accurate representation of the sound. You know, the Kii Three speakers with the BXT extension that you see here play down to 20 Hz. I mean, in an anechoic environment, they play down to 20 Hz at minus 1.5 decibels. This means that the low-end extension of these speakers is better than in most of the club, and because I'm working a lot on electronic music, the low-end content and the loudness of the low end and the punch and the compactness of the low end is very important. Another thing I love about those speakers is they don't have any bass reflex, they don't have any port design. So what you hear is exactly what is in the music. There is no additional decaying. So if I feel a bass is a bit too flabby, I know it's not the room. So the magic with those two PSI bass traps was that for the first time in my life could I be sitting in a room and not feeling the bass around me, but hearing the bass just in front of me. It was super tight. Lastly, to finish the tour to whomever would like to make a studio one day, I have different plugs a bit everywhere on the ground and in the walls, with also patch bass covering, going from one place, and you see behind the sound card as well, going from one place to another, having USB coming out, RJ45 for Ethernet or sending other signals, Firewire. So with this idea of having everything on wheels, I can move everything and plug into the USB socket, put some power, and I'm ready to go. Like you see the modular table here, there is just like 2 cables coming out of it, one for the power and one with USB. The sound card is at the back, so I can plug everything on there as well, and I'm ready to go. This is the magic of the modular rig, the very flexible thing. Why did I decided that? Because, well, for once there was this question of the acoustics inside the room. As I said, I don't want anything between the speakers and myself for acoustic reasons, but also for years I struggled because I wanted things close to me when I was working, like I wanted my controllers close to my hands, but then at some point I was not making music with controllers but with hardware, and sometimes a friend was coming and then I had to move things around and then unplug every power cable, and then it was a mess with the cable management. I put just a table there. There is power, there is USB, there is MIDI just here. I can show it for a second, you know, like here. I open this, I have MIDI coming out, I have RJ45 cable, I have USB cable, so everything is just pluggable in a second. Well, yeah, and I'm ready to go. Everything so fast, accessible, is also not just a question of comfort, but also to be always in a proper workflow. You know, you don't need to lose time unplugging things, looking for things, and this is very, very, very nice, while also being always sitting in the sweet spot. I'm very, very happy of the overall acoustics here. For the mastering works, I have really like pristine sound, and yet I'm very flexible too welcome other people and to be able to do not only mastering but also mixing, sound design, and many things I like. So that's for the little studio tour. So now that we've covered the studio and the acoustic part of it, we could talk a bit about plugins. I made a video not so long time ago about why actually having a variety of plugins is for me very important. Not that I have this gear acquisition syndrome, but I believe that actually some plugins are actually ear openers or eye openers and are helping you actually to hear new things, because they allow you to do some things, they allow you also to hear other things and to do maybe better work. I have no specific brand that I follow, yet I believe FabFilter is a very amazing suite. Ozone, Isotope Ozone is very great for doing many different things. I love what the guys from Tone Projects are doing with Basslane or with Unisum, very exceptional tools. I like a lot what Oak Sound does, both with Spiff, Bloom, and Soothe, very amazing plugins as well. The guys from Sonable also do incredible work with the smart tools, both the Smart Limit, which is an amazing limiter. You can watch out my limiter comparison, it's coming out very top of the game. But also Smart EQ, even if, for example, sometimes Smart EQ can, for mastering work, can change the stereo image, it does many other very great things. I don't use it that much in mixing context, even if they have this this smart, how could I say, this smart algorithm where you can have several instances and making some priority on some instances, and they do automatic unmasking. This is something, so far, it didn't cut it for me. I guess it's because of the style of music. Maybe if I was doing more pop and more classical, traditional music with bass guitar, it would work better. But for electronic music with very complex sound design, I think it's still not there, but maybe one day. So big up still to the guys from Sonable, because they do amazing job. And lastly, also a big up to Fabian from Tokyo Down Records, because with Molot, they have an amazing compressor. They have this ultrasonic, the infrasonics. So they develop a lot of tools that are very well crafted. So these are tools that I couldn't live without. Shadow Hills compressor for my mastering duties, and also the VSC2 compressor are always at the grasp of my fingers, because I think they work in an amazing way. What else could I talk about? Yeah, the Crafture and K-Clip, amazing multiband clippers, different flavors, but very nice tools as well. Also, what I think is, well, because the plugins are so transparent and because they are so cheap, having different plugins that do kind of the same work, but actually knowing them very well is another way to yeah, to give some flavors to your sound. Oh, I talk about Tone Empire, of course. Michelangelo is an amazing color box, an EQ that is bringing punch or texture or slight saturation, enhancing the bass. I mean, it's incredible. I can only highly recommend that tool as well. And for flavoring also, of course, the black box distortion is amazing. And I would recommend also Decapitator and all the sound toys, both for filtering, delays, or the crystallizer. I mean, amazing tool. So I think with all this, I covered a bit like the big ones that I use nearly every day, either in mixing or in mastering. And lastly, maybe I'm gonna cover a little thing about the hardware you see there. Some of you may know, but I'm working with this very great Belgian brand called Shackmat. They develop a lot of models. This is actually my Shackmat, more or less essential case. And here a lot of other things. I love the Modular to create new texture, to develop sound design. What I love with it is basically just the fact that I can close my eyes and twist knobs, and this is a feeling that I don't get with plugins. Is as spending hours just diving into sound, nights that I don't see time passing through. And I believe that on this aspect, hardware is still very peculiar. I'm not saying that it's sounding better than some digital things. It has a vibe that is different. Serum is an amazing tool as well. They just released Serum 2, which is even crazier. So I'm not a digital versus hardware guy. I think every piece of gear has its own strengths, but on the modular, I don't need recall. I'm just generating things. I'm recording very long sessions, and then I'm just editing what I'm making with that. And funnily enough, as soon as I have my material and I start making music, well, most of the time, if I need additional elements, I will not go back to the modular, but I will just dial in a plugin. So it's just a question of workflow and finding what works best for you. This is what works for me. I'm not saying that because it works for me that it's working for you. I think it's important that everyone finds what's working best for himself. And as far as I'm concerned, working in the box for both mixing and mastering, having this recall and being able to edit with just very, very tiny details is very great. The only thing I'm missing so far is a proper control surface to control my plugins, because I would like to get away a bit more from the mouse. There are a few ones on the market, but I didn't yet decide which one I wanted to buy. Oh, and I forgot, last very, very essential part of the studio. It's mandatory. My notebook. Why do I say it's mandatory? Because, to my experience, when I'm really like doing some active listening, you know, like really paying attention to the details, whether it's the arrangement, the mixing, or whatever, but I feel that working with a computer is somehow taking away my attention. And so I'm always having that little notebook and taking notes by hand. And this is for me the only way to stay in the zone, to keep the focus of my attention while also being able to write things down for further work. And also I think that this is the best way to be efficient in your work, is instead of hitting the space bar and starting to edit something as soon as you hear it, in fact, just keep your attention, keep the focus, keep listening, just take some notes, and then start to edit everything with the notes in hand. So what about the approach while mastering? Well, I first start to identify things that I don't like, things that are problematic, like resonances, like bumps in the spectrum, muddiness in the low end, or harshness in the top end. And these are the first thing that I try to tackle, to reduce and to remove those unwanted things. Then starts the whole process of controlling the dynamics, controlling the tonal balance. Maybe the balance is right in an overall level, but at some point some elements are poking out, so then I might use a dynamic EQ or a multiband EQ. Maybe the overall loudness is not very well controlled, so I might use a compressor for that, or I want to add some punch and use another compressor, but yeah, set up in a different way with longer attack time and short release, like to get the groove. Then I start to enhance what I feel might still be enhanced in the track, using some EQ then, but more coloring EQ, like the as I said earlier, the Michelangelo from Tone Project, or using Exciter. I love Ozone's Exciter, for example, because it's not working on a full spectrum, but just on some bands. So trying to actually add something more to the track, you know, bring it more to life, maybe widen some area where I feel that it's too wide. Also, this being said, when I'm talking about removing unwanted things, it's also using bass lane to recenter the low end, or maybe using some mid-side EQ where I feel that actually the sides are too narrow, too wide, and I want to narrow them, or if I hear a vocal that is poking out, and just EQ something in the mid part of the signal. This is why mid-side EQ really comes into play. Once I've controlled all that and that I have enhanced what I feel that needed to be enhanced, then I'll just put a limiter on the chain, and I'm looking with the level matched feature of my limiter, how far can I push things before it breaks apart, before I start to hear the effect of the limiter. What I want here is actually to be able to blindly turn on off the limiter and not being able to tell when the limiter is turned on or off. And while doing so, if later on then I turn up the level, the output level, up to -1 decibel full scale, because this is my ceiling for the reasons I talked about this other video, well, then I'm looking, am I in the right ballpark of the genre? Then it's done. If not, then I need to find ways to actually beef up the loudness without harming the track, being upwards compression, being multi-stage limiting, working maybe with multi-band compression, depending on the track, depending on the spectrum of the track. But most of it, the whole process is fixing what needs to be fixed, enhancing what could be enhanced, what could support the musical journey, and a final limiter. Lastly, maybe with a final limiter, it's reducing a bit the macro dynamics, and then I might do some automations, or sometimes I have some, this is not often the case, but it happens, that some processes are just needed on some parts of the track, because some problem is just there at some part of the track, and there I might use automations to have processes that are not working all the time, but just some part of the time. Broadly, that's the process. Yeah, if you have some questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I will be happy to answer all your questions there. That's it. I hope this was helpful, that it might inspire you some ideas, both for the design of your studio, the acoustics. I mean, if you want to do proper studio design, there are some resources that I'm going to link in the description for websites that help you to do some projections of the room modes and things like that. Of course, if you go into that direction, I can only highly recommend to start using Room EQ Wizard, which is the best measurement software that is free, that is available for free, and just buy some measurement microphone. It's like less than 100 euros, and it will help you understand a lot what's happening inside your room and getting a much more better sound at not so high cost. You can already achieve very nice results without building a box in a box. Of course, not everyone needs a mastering room, and some people are doing masterings in not fully treated rooms. I think this is working as long as you are always checking also with headphones and different speakers to be sure that what you are delivering really translates very well. I was doing this a lot before, but since I have this room and these speakers and I listen for hours countless of records, I have a total trust in what I'm hearing, and I don't need to do some double or triple checks, which is actually not only comfortable, but it's also very much more efficient and allowing me to work faster and delivering things that I'm happy with. So that's it, guys. I wish you all the best. It's already a very long video as well. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.